This four box that you see in front of you with individual, team, product, and organization is something that I've been using for quite a while. I've grown to like it over time because it helps us sort through so many different organizational transformation, scaling, rollout issues all at the same time, and even governance issues. So for the individual box, we tend to, for example, quote Daniel Pink in his book Drive, where he talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose are some of the intrinsic motivators that individuals actually are motivated by. When we look at the team box, there we're looking at Scrum Master or Agile Team Facilitator or just Team Facilitator, depending on if your company is using Scrum or Agile. And in the product box, along with the product owner, I'm primarily looking at the Agile roles of team facilitation, Agile coaching, and enterprise Agile coaching through these boxes right now. Agile coaches need to be able to not only work with the product owners, but they also need to be able to work with program managers, anybody who are process managers, line managers, and so on. So the Agile coaching level does everything that the team level does, plus additional items. And it's the same for enterprise Agile coaching that usually works with portfolio level and above. And we should keep in mind that the two boxes on the left side, that's primarily the language of management. And the two boxes on the right tend to be a little bit of the language of management, especially when you're talking program management. But when you get into the lower right corner, it's the language of leadership. And those are two very different things. And so we'll try to keep that in mind as we're going through transformation. And it's important to understand the difference between the two of those. This slide is the first of 17 tiles, if you want to call them that. And so we start with people on this particular slide. Usually we'll start with vision, but here we'll start with people and the different roles that they play. Now, in Scrum, which are in green here on this slide, you should differentiate between Scrum roles and HR roles. They're two different things. They don't mean the same thing. And so a lot of times people will confuse Scrum roles with HR roles, like what's your title that you have in the organization. We really shouldn't look at it that way. The first role in Scrum is up in the right-hand corner, and that's the product owner. And then down in the left corner, we've got the developers and the team level facilitator, known as sometimes as the Scrum Master, and then also each of the individuals that happen to be on the team, typically individual developers. We'll keep Scrum Master and product owner separate for this particular discussion. The Scrum Master is the green dot in the middle. So you'll notice that it goes into all four boxes. The Scrum Master definitely needs to work with the individuals and the teams and the product owner, supporting the product owner in making sure we deliver the vision and the goal for the product that we're trying to get out the door. And so the green dot represents that the Scrum Master or team level facilitator will work with individuals, they'll work with the team members, they'll work with the product owners, the program managers, the line managers, the business owners, the Agile coaches. And they'll even sometimes work with other parts of the organization in order to advocate for better processes throughout the organization. So that's why I put the Scrum Master dot there in the middle, touching all 4 boxes, because they do that. Okay, but their main time is spent on the individual team and product boxes. The Agile coaches do everything that a Scrum Master does, plus more, and we get into that in another area, either in this presentation or one of our other ones. And the Agile coach also needs to be able to work with the program managers, the line managers, and the business owners, coaching and mentoring them along with the product owners on best practices, as well as the team level facilitators and individuals. Agile coaches will deal more with organizational issues than Scrum Masters, and so that's why the yellow part of the circle touches those 3 boxes. It's not that they don't work with individuals, but it's just that primarily they're going to work in the product, team, and organization boxes. And the Agile coaches will also support the Enterprise Agile coaches in working with the organization. The Enterprise Agile coaches, so that's the blue circle there, they primarily work in the product and organization areas, and they work with the portfolio managers, senior and executive management, along with the C-level. So when we're looking at the 17 areas, it's almost like a plate spinner at the circus. When we're looking at those 4 areas and these 4 lenses, I'm trying to help you understand that each of these roles are distinct roles for the team level facilitators, Scrum Masters, to the Agile coaches, to the Enterprise Agile coaches. And so I'm trying to help you differentiate between the 3 of those. We'll go more into depth on those in another part of the presentations. The second tile or plate that we're trying to keep spinning is the journey to AHA. And this is where it gets interesting, because we're going to talk about that we need to do these in all 4 boxes, just as we saw on the last slide. But let's just start with the individual. Anytime that you learn something new, a skill or whatever, in the beginning, the individual will struggle with that, and they'll go through the motions. And hopefully, if they've gone through the motions enough times, they will go, oh, I get this. This makes sense. It works. And suddenly, they go over what we call the aha point and move into an area where they can start to perform, and hopefully over time get to higher levels of sustainable high performance. On the left side there, you'll notice that we have hands-on. Now, this does not mean micromanagement, okay? This means that we will train, coach, and mentor, train, coach, and mentor, train, coach, and mentor as the individual is coming up the curve. And we'll do as much as necessary until they get to that aha point. And it can be for an individual, especially if they come from a classic traditional waterfall background, that journey can be up to a couple of years. And it takes time for them to go from saying yes, but to everything to saying yes, and instead. And so don't think of hands-on as micromanagement or as a license to micromanage. Doesn't mean that at all. It means that you're going to spend more time coaching individuals who are struggling and just going through the motions until you can get them up past the aha curve. Also, I need to point out here the horizontal line there, that's sort of like a performance line. And so that doesn't mean that an individual that's learning as they're going through a transformation and a rollout of, let's say, for example, Agile, that doesn't mean that they're not performing. They're on the left side. All that means is that they're probably not performing at a level that is what the organization is aiming for. Okay? And so once you get over the aha point, you'll notice that as they're performing, the bubble's starting to go above that line, getting to the point that the organization really needs them. As they continue to perform and get the high performance, you'll notice in the bottom there, we have hands off. That doesn't mean that we just walk away and say, have a party. That means that we actually continue to coach and mentor. But we're probably not having to do very much training at this point in time. You can sort of also think about this picture that on the left side, that's more doing Agile, just going through the motions. Some people will call it zombie Agile, depending on how bad it is. Over to being Agile, where you've had that aha moment where you go, oh, yeah, now this makes sense. This really works. I believe it works. I've seen it work. And now you're going to perform and move towards high performance. And that's what many Agilists will talk about, being Agile rather than just doing Agile. And each and every person involved in Agile in an organization has to go up this curve. It also applies to team, and those are the little X's that you'll see in there. One of the case studies in our book, Flow, was about Nature Publishing Group. And as we moved the teams, and this isn't an exact number of teams, we had more than that. But basically, we started out with like 4 teams in the struggling box and 6 or 7 teams in the motions, with just a few teams performing and 1 team high performing. And over time, those teams, and that's what the arrows are for, hopefully they're going up to the next bubble. And as you get, for example, when we went from 4 to 2 and probably 6 or 7 down to 5, and the rest moved up into performing and high performing, we didn't get everybody with, but we got enough people with across the aha curve where they went from, in 2010, being able to deliver 58 projects a year to, in 2013, being able to deliver 124 projects per year. That means that in those 3 years, when they looked at the backlog, looking when they could do less than 60 a year, on the average, they had over 260 projects in the pipeline at that time, which meant that they had almost 4.5 years worth of projects. Now, we delivered 72 the first year, 98 the second year, 124 the third year, which is over 290 projects. So not only in 3 years did we deliver the original project backlog of 260 plus projects, we delivered 10% more with 10% less people, because through natural attrition in those 3 years, we didn't hire anybody to replace anybody who left. At least that's what I remember. That being the case, we were able to complete the entire backlog so quickly that we saved 1.5 years worth of budget. So in the book, I think I counted at about roughly 18 million of value add, because we freed up over a year's worth of budget. The reality is probably closer to 27 million that we actually delivered on that particular project. So for me, what happened when I was at MPG, that was one of the big aha moments for me, is that you don't have to get everybody with. But if you get enough people with and over the aha curve, on the average, you will probably double the amount of projects that you can deliver.